On episode 208 of the 40 Plus Fitness Podcast, we meet with Pete Evans and discuss his book, The Complete Gut Health Cookbook. You can find the full show notes for this episode at 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/208. Have you decided you're ready to make a change? To reclaim your health and fitness? The 40 Plus Fitness Podcast is here for you. I'm your host, Alan Meisner. I'm an NSAM certified personal trainer with a specialization in corrective exercise and fitness nutrition. Let me be your coach as you find your way on your health and fitness journey. All right, let's go. Have you checked out our challenges for February? Go to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/challenges. We're offering a squat challenge, a sugar challenge, and a new burpee challenge. And if you'll use the coupon code podcast for the burpee challenge, you'll get that one for free. Again, go to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/challenges. Today's guest is an award-winning Australian chef, restaurateur, author, television presenter, health coach, adventure seeker, and father. He is one of Australia's leading authorities on healthy cooking and lifestyle and is dedicated to improving people's lives through education about nutritional food and wellness. He is the co-host of Channel 7's hugely successful show, My Kitchen Rules, and the host of his own series and online program, The Paleo Way. So with no further ado, I introduce you to Pete Evans. So Pete, welcome to 40 Plus Fitness.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's an honor.
You know, this was a really good book. Typically, a lot of times you'll get cookbooks, and some of them are pretty. This one's gorgeous. And, it really is. It's just gorgeous. And the pictures in the book and the recipes that are in the book are really, really great. We actually tried the asparagus and bacon soup.
A favorite.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be something we eat regularly. And what I liked about it was, you're putting 4 bunches of asparagus in for 4 servings, and it seems like a lot. It cooks down a good bit. I ended up eating, 10 stalks or more of asparagus, where typically I might eat 5 or 6. So I think it's a lot of these recipes, particularly the soups and whatnot, are kind of a great way for us to get more good food into our body.
Well, for sure. And asparagus is a wonderful, not only, it's a prebiotic, but when you're having it in a soup like this, especially this time of the year, if you're in the States, you're getting that nourishing chicken bone broth or other type of bone broth that you're cooking into it. So I see it as the perfect meal because you're getting that nourishing, gut-healthy bone broth. You're getting something like asparagus, as I said, which has that prebiotic goodness, which your gut bacteria feeds off in a good way instead of in a negative way when you're putting too much starch in there or refined carbohydrates. And then adding to that, you're putting a little bit of bacon in there too. And anything with bacon, if it's from pasture-raised pigs, is just a tick in my book because it just adds wonderful fat, wonderful flavour. And the whole premise of this book is actually, it is basically a vegetarian-style diet with a side of meat. And I think that's where, if we could start with that premise, I think a lot of people will understand where we're coming from.
Absolutely. And so most cookbooks will have this at the front. This is definitely a good cookbook. But at the front, you have some really good information. You've partnered with a naturopathic dietitian. And so there's a lot of really good information on the front end. So I do want to kind of go through a little bit of that if you have some time to do that.
Sure.
The approach that you have here is kind of a 6-step approach. And I kind of like particularly the first one, because I think that's where a lot of us are stuck, is addressing the inflammation. Can you go into that just a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, all you need to do is look around, whether you're at a shopping centre or walking down the street or at an airport, and you will see inflammation is rife in the human species. When we talk about inflammation, we're talking about bloating, we're talking about being overweight. I mean, that's the first, I guess, a sign that something is a little bit wrong with our species. Because if you look at nature, every animal regulates its own weight and inflammation, except those unlucky enough to be fed by us. So if we could address that inflammation first and foremost, get our bodies into a state where they can start to basically self-heal. And that's what our bodies are always striving to do and basically do. And that's what the inflammation is there basically to do. It's putting out the fire, but after a while, it can't deal with that bushfire in our body so much, and that's why we end up either putting on weight or getting that bloatedness or having those gut problems, which then eventually turn into type 2 diabetes, chronic illness, heart disease, potentially cancer, and a whole lot of these other chronic illnesses. Some of the world's leading scientists and researchers say that 70 to 80% of all medical issues are basically caused by poor diet and or lifestyle. So could you imagine the human species if we could basically eliminate 70 to 80% of chronic illness just by choosing to eat an anti-inflammatory diet, which is what this book is really about, and which why I have teamed up with Helen Patteran, who is our naturopath, who she's got over 15 years of dealing with this acute inflammation, not only in adults but also in children, because we're seeing this more and more these days that our children or the coming generations are actually much worse off health-wise than our generation were, or our parents' generation, or our grandparents' generation. And that all has to do with the diet of these children's parents, and it also has to do with environmental factors and the way that our food is grown and produced, and what we're deciding to choose to put into our plates or bowls or on the end of our chopsticks or forks or spoons each and every single day. So first and foremost, that was a long spiel, but yes, we need to address acute inflammation.
Okay. And then the second one is about improving the integrity of your gut wall. Could you go a little bit into that one?
Sure. So we have a very simple formula throughout this book. It's about removing the inflammatory foods. Now, the most common inflammatory foods for the human species is grains, dairy, how it's produced these days, and also legumes for a lot of people. Now, if you have an autoimmune condition or illness, then you may also need to look at other inflammatory foods that people with autoimmune issues respond to, and that can be nightshade vegetables, it can be eggs, nuts and seeds, as generally the most common. Now, people can have an inflammatory response to basically any food these days, but we start with the most common ones. So if we start with gluten-containing grains or any type of grains, the legumes and the dairy, once we remove that, basically we're giving our bodies the chance to actually improve their gut wall integrity. Now, we go into the book a little bit deeper into how to do that, and we've got some great little simple, I guess, recipes that we've been doing for millennia, if not since the history of our cooking and our hunting-gathering adventures. And some of that is, for instance, creating bone broth. So if you look at every indigenous tribe around the world, they were hunter-gatherers, or civilization. They would hunt and they would gather. Once they've hunted, whether it be seafood or land-based animals, they would eat nose to tail. Nothing would go to waste, including the bones, and they would heat up the bones with some water and they make broths, which is why we have soups and broths from every corner of the globe. Now, what happens when you cook up beautiful bones and the joints of the animal, is they contain these very, very, I call them superfoods basically. They have the collagen, they have the gelatin, they have the glucosamine. They have basically everything that the beauty industry is trying to get you to buy for a very expensive amount to put onto your skin. Whereas in actual fact, if you're intelligent enough, you will understand that the best way to actually sort of stop that aging process and to help heal your gut is to actually include it in a form of beverage or food. So coming from a chef's point of view, the first thing that I learned at culinary school was how to make a bone broth. I was taught in the traditional French culinary method or tradition, and that was what we first got taught to do. It was fish stock, beef stock, chicken stock. Now, we learnt that from a flavour point of view, but on a nutritional point of view, as I said, we get all of this beautiful magnesium, potassium, calcium, collagen. And all of this, when you start to ingest it internally, does wonders for if you have any joint problems, if you have any digestion problems, if you have any skin problems or issues. That's where this sort of wonderful concoction starts to go to work, because it improves the gut wall integrity. So The broths is a wonderful, very cheap tool. And I'm in New York City today, actually. I just flew in and I noticed there's bone broth, little cafes and places that are selling this now. It's sort of the next best thing to coffee. I don't drink coffee, but, it's great to see this popping up. And then if you want to take it one step further, we see this over the last 5 years or 10 years, people are popping probiotic capsules. Now, research and studies show that they can do very little to the integrity of our gut colonization of these wonderful bacteria. But if you actually eat it in a whole food form, it can be up to 100 to 1,000 times more powerful than a probiotic capsule and probably about 100 times cheaper. So what I'm talking about there is fermented foods such as sauerkraut or kimchi. Now, this isn't new stuff. This is basically how we used to store and harvest or store our harvest to get us through either cold times when we couldn't grow our own vegetables. So we would take our cabbages or vegetables, work out how to preserve them, usually packed in some salt or a brine type solution, and they would ferment. And once you ferment a vegetable like cabbage, basically you're creating lactic acid bacteria, which in turn turns into a wonderful prebiotic and probiotic. So when you consume that, and I consume it with every single meal that I eat, just a little side serve of sauerkraut or kimchi, it adds this beneficial probiotic bacteria into our guts, which our guts thrive off and help to colonize and give us wonderful health. And if you start to do these two simple practices by making your own chicken broth or beef broth and add to that some fermented vegetables, we would have a very different health outlook, not only in the United States, but every Western society around the world, that's for sure.
Okay, I want to jump back into the food because I think that's what's really interesting about this. You actually have a table in the book that gets into some of the, I guess you called them star foods. And this was a very good table, very good list, because it had each of the foods, and all these foods are in your different recipes, which is great. And then it kind of talks about why you give them star qualities. So I do want to go through a few of them. I think a few of them we've probably heard about before, like apple cider vinegar, bone broth we've talked about. I think, a lot of people will have heard about coconut oil and cumin. So, those are some interesting ones that I already saw. And we talked about fermented foods like the kimchi and the sauerkraut. But I saw some in here that I thought were really interesting. And I've got to start with one. I was a teenager in Mississippi, in the south of Mississippi, and kudzu was this plant that threatened to take over the world if we didn't beat it down every summer and spring. So I spent a lot of time with a sling blade beating down these weeds. Is that the same plant that you're talking about here, or is that a different plant?
I'm not sure what your plant, what you got down in Mississippi. I apologize.
That's all right. That's all right. It's just when I saw kudzu, I was like, okay, that's a very leafy plant that grows very, very quickly, at least down in South Mississippi.
It could very well be. I mean, as a chef, we use it for thickening up soups, and we can use it, naturopaths use it for herbal teas, and it's been used in Chinese medicine for centuries.
And if it's the one in Mississippi, it's very easy to grow for yourself. Just put a little bit of it in your backyard and you'll have plenty.
Fantastic, yeah, but naturopaths love it, and they use it in some of their preparations, and it's used basically in repairing the gut wall as well, so it's very good for gut health. And I mean, you can research your stuff. I mean, all the information is in the book or on the net, and you can go to it. I mean, I see these superfoods or these lists of ingredients as sort of what you may want to choose to include into your diet under the guidance of a naturopath or a functional medical doctor, or you can tinker around yourself. I mean, they're pretty low-key ingredients as long as you're not overdoing them. But again, one thing I don't want people to do is think that this is an expensive way to eat. If we go back to the basics, as we talked about, the broths or the fermented veg, and then basically constructing a vegetarian diet with a side of meat, because a lot of people don't have the money to spend on really beautiful, well-sourced meats or seafood. And that's what I'm trying to promote here is, yes, actually spend your money on organic or wild-caught or free-range or pasture-raised healthy animals, but don't eat too much of them and eat nose to tail. So if you can include some offal, whether it be some bone marrow or some liver or some brains, some kidneys from time to time, but you don't need to eat a hell of a lot of these beautiful animals. You just really need to have a small to moderate amount but then fill your plate with beautiful organic vegetables, or put it into a soup or a salad or a stir fry or a curry. And that way you open the door to, endless possibilities or combinations of flavour and food. I do think we live in the best of times as far as our ability to create delicious food. So there really shouldn't be any excuse to not experiment with this beautiful formula for getting healthy.
Yeah. Now, the asparagus soup that we talked about earlier, it had some lemon juice in it as well, just a little bit. Could you talk about lemon juice?
Sure. I mean, fruits in general are wonderful. They have so many wonderful properties to them. We tend to steer, when you're trying to heal your gut, we try to steer people away from the really sugary fruits for a period of time, just because they raise your blood sugar so much. So citrus fruits and berries and non-starchy fruits like avocados, cucumbers, tomatoes, as long as you don't have an issue with nightshades, zucchini, eggplants, these type of foods are wonderful. And lemon juice is wonderful to basically start off. I like to start off the day with just a squeeze of lemon juice in a little bit of water, and it helps to stimulate your digestive acids and get that bile flowing. And once you start to, do this on a daily habit, instead of having your coffee, you will find that, you have this different energy, because if people have coffee in the morning, it's a stimulant. So you'll never really understand how your body feels without that stimulant. So by having that little bit of lemon juice, it's not caffeine, so it doesn't give you that false sense of energy or high. So we always try to get people off their caffeine addictions when they're trying to heal their gut. So, but to get people into a routine, because I think that's where a lot of the addictive nature of coffee comes into, it becomes that routine, is we want people to swap that out either for some herbal tea, or maybe just a squeeze of lemon juice in some warm water in the morning. You could even add or a splash of apple cider vinegar in there, or even some turmeric as well. So you're getting that curcumin into your daily medicinal dosage as well. And it is a pick-me-up, but on the opposite flip side of how caffeine does it. So give it a shot. You might think I'm crazy.
And no, that goes back to Ayurvedic medicine, where they actually encourage you to do a warm glass of water with lemon in the morning. So yeah, I've heard that for quite some time, and it is an interesting feeling when you start doing it. You've done it for a little while. It's something that you kind of wake up and say, well, normally I'd go get coffee, but I'm gonna drink this, and it just kind of refreshes you a little bit. You kind of feel, I don't know, like you said, it's kind of, for me, it's hard to explain exactly what it feels like, but you do feel different if you're doing it that way.
Yeah, for sure. And going into the gut health a little bit more when we talk about probiotics as well, is you can actually include probiotic drinks into your daily routine or weekly routine. Things like kombucha, especially the low sugar versions of kombucha if you make it yourself, or if you are going to buy it from the store, make sure it's a very low sugar content one. Or you can make kefir, Kefir, and you do a dairy-free version of that, so water kefir or coconut water kefir. And again, you can add some ginger or some turmeric into these, and they're really simple to make and very, very inexpensive to make if you're doing it yourself. And that way you might start off the day with 30 or 60 or an ounce or 2 ounces in the morning or before you go to bed or before a meal, just to help, it kickstarts your digestion process as well and gives you those wonderful probiotics. So these items are coming back into, these very old school beverages are coming back into fashion as well, which is great. I remember making kombucha about 25 years ago when I first heard of it. It's a beautiful process. It's a very, I don't know, there's something very romantic about it.
Yeah, I had Miss Klum on. She wrote the big book of kombucha, and I bought one of her kits. So I have some kombucha in there. I'm making right now. I think it's about time for me to actually taste it. And it's very inexpensive. I mean, literally, this thing holds 2 gallons of tea. So I basically make 2 gallons of sweet tea. There's a SCOBY in there. I leave it in there for about a week, and I have all the kombucha I could want. And it's very, very inexpensive. Same thing with the sauerkraut. 2 heads of cabbage, some salt for the brine, and put those in jars. Get them covered up. Make sure they're covered in the moisture, and a week later you've got sauerkraut. So these are very inexpensive ways to improve your health, and you've got the recipes right here in the book. So one thing I wanted to do before I let you go, we tried the asparagus soup, and that's going to be a staple for us, I think, going forward, because my wife and I both love asparagus. But if there was another recipe in here that you wanted me to try, what would that be?
Oh, it's like picking my favorite child. I've got two beautiful daughters, and I love them. I love them equally the same. So it's always difficult to pick a favorite. But I think I'll go back to what I touched on earlier in the piece is offal, because offal is an ingredient that, if we look back in time, it was an ingredient that basically it would have been on our weekly menus for our great-grandparents and their ancestors. And if we look globally, without any Western influence, offal would probably feature on menus from all around the globe, probably on a daily, if not a few times a week in people's menus, going back through millennia. So what I notice these days, especially in Western culture or Western society, in Australia, New Zealand, Canada, the United Kingdom, United States, is that we have over the last couple of generations, we have slowly and surely basically made offal disappear from not only our supermarkets, our butcher stores, but also from our weekly food items. Now, if we study offal, we will realise that it is the only basically superfood for us on the planet. Nothing else as far as nutrient density comes close, especially if you're talking about liver. Liver is the star. I mean, it's got choline, it actually contains vitamin C. I think it's the only form of meat on the planet that actually has vitamin C. It has vitamin K2, it has vitamin A. Now, these type of vitamins are pretty hard for the body to get from any other source, which is why a lot of people are deficient in them or lacking. And if we could, this is what I was saying, if we could just get people to eat some liver once a week with some broth and with some fermented vegetables, I think we'd have a very different health outlook or health, the way our health is in the Western society. So I'm looking here at the chicken liver soup, or in the book we've also got a chicken liver terrine. And these two are wonderful ways of getting liver into your diet. And probably a terrine is basically a traditional French set pate. Now, most people will attempt to try pate because it is quite mild. And the reason that it is mild is because when you cook pate, you don't overcook the liver. So I think a lot of people's, disgust of offal is because they've tried it and someone's overcooked it. So if you overcook liver, it becomes potent and horrible. Whereas if you make pate, you're basically cooking the liver till it's medium rare or pink, which keeps it quite sweet and creamy and pink. So if you check out the terrine recipe, we actually mix 2 parts chicken liver to, I think, about 1 part pork mince or other type of mince. And then we blend that with some eggs, with a little bit of broth and some beautiful flavourings like sautéed onions, and you can throw in a little bit of bacon there and some seasoning. And then we put that into like a bread tin and we bake it very slowly in a water bath in the oven. Now, this might sound really tricky, but honestly, it will take you about 5 minutes of preparation, and then you just pop it in the oven for about an hour or so on a very low heat. And there you'll have enough pate or terrine to feed your family for a good week. And it's very mild. My kids love it. They're 10 and 11, and they don't like eating liver if I cook a piece of liver.
Well, that's my wife. So yeah, that's the challenge I have is getting my wife to eat this. But I actually have chicken livers in the refrigerator right now that are due to do something. So this is definitely gonna be something I probably work on tonight or tomorrow.
And I'm probably not going to make too many friends by saying this, but that's okay. But if you can just put a little bit of offal into your month, make it a challenge for yourself. I mean, as a chef, we love using it, and top chefs always have it on their menu, whether it's brains or marrow or whatever it may be. Give it a go. Step out of your comfort zone, because your body will love you for it.
Well, thank you. So the book is the Complete Gut Health Cookbook. And like I said, it's beautiful. It's got some awesome recipes in here. I definitely recommend the asparagus, and I will be trying out the taurine. So, Pete, if someone wanted to get in touch with you or get the book, where would you like for me to send them?
They can buy it if you're in the States from Amazon or wherever good books are sold. You can check out my website, peteevans.com, or my Facebook page, Chef Pete Evans. Or if you want to do a 10-week program, we've got that set up at thepaleoway.com, which will give you hundreds of recipes and get you with a healthy gut after 10 weeks.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on 40 Plus Fitness.
My pleasure, and good health to everybody, and thanks for listening.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I do hope that you get Pete's cookbook. It really is good. The recipes are just awesome, and I know you're going to enjoy it. And before we go, though, I do want to ask you one thing. Have you signed up for our challenges? You know, challenges are a great way to find success, get motivation, find encouragement, and I really do encourage you to get out there and try some of these things. You know, you'd be surprised what you can do, and I've seen folks go through these challenges and really have great results. Now, two of them are kind of relaunches, the sugar challenge and the squat challenge. I've made some tweaks to them, so if you've done them before, you might want to check them out again. These are going to be 28-day challenges now, but we've got one going on with the sugar challenge and one going on with the squat challenge, and I'm introducing a new one, the burpee challenge. Are you up for a burpee challenge? Well, the cool thing is, because you're a podcast listener, I'm giving you a special treat. I'm not sharing this with anyone else but you. If you use the coupon code PODCAST when you go to the checkout on the burpee challenge, you'll get it for free. It won't cost you anything. So go to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/challenges, pick the challenges right for you, and I'll see you on the other side. You only have a few days left, so don't delay. Let's go get that done, and let's make the challenge happen. Next time on the 40 Plus Fitness Podcast, we meet with Dr. Alyssa Epple and discuss her book, The Telomere Effect, a revolutionary approach to living younger, healthier, longer. Until then, have a happy and healthy day.